Top tiers time. We're getting all kinds of grimy and slimy today. In the world of competition, when every choice you make could spell the difference between glory and defeat, $1 million or $1,500, oftentimes the safest way to ensure your spot at the top is to follow that tier list like it's scripture. You might be used to an accompanying low tiers video that tends to precede this one, and I will be doing another low tiers video as a companion to this, but it's 2026, baby. If you're not playing a top tier, you're not playing the game. So today I'll be talking about a couple more really strong fighting game characters. It's gonna be a hell of a ride, so strap in and let's get busy. Last time I made one of these videos, I got to talking about top dog of Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2, Johnny. Johnny's a piece of work, ridiculous in just about every way, and the character of choice for Omito, often considered one of the most successful Xrd players with multiple championships under his belt. Johnny is amazing, but Xrd has lots of other really cool and very strong characters who fill the spots below Johnny's throne, like Chip, Eno, Faust, and Venom. Today we won't be looking at any of them. Instead, let's talk about Elphelt Valentine. Elphelt, my beloved. This is an extremely funny character. She's super popular, especially amongst creatives. Cosplayers and artists love her, but speak her name to someone who plays Xrd competitively, and they might have a panic attack. That's because Elphelt's Xrd incarnation is infamous for how strong she is. She's basically always grouped into a set of 9 or 10 characters considered the best in tier lists, and some tend to place her as high as second, only to Johnny. So let's delve into why that is. Right off the bat, Elphelt has a ton of standout buttons. If a lady who's a walking armory isn't enough to convince you to take the plunge, some of these normals definitely should. Elphelt has incredible control of the mid-range, and she owes that to her far slash and 5H. Both of these buttons sport massive horizontal range, so she's able to poke efficiently from just around round start distance. Worth noting with 5H is that by pressing the button, Elphelt will fire up to 4 additional shots, the last of which knocks down on a grounded hit. You get a shocking amount of damage off of this considering how simple the confirm is, and this is all on a button that's already excellent for combo conversions. 5H does whiff on every character in the game when crouching though. Didn't say it was perfect. 6H is another far-reaching button. This command normal sports some serious range and a ton of active frames, making it one of her best pokes. Elphelt 6H is adept at catching jumpaways, it leads to insane damage as a combo starter, especially on counter hits, and it's special cancelable for some added use and pressure. Her 2S is a really great button that leads to nice reward on counter hit. Elphelt has a unique 6P. For the majority of the roster, 6P is used as an anti-air. Elphelt has upper body invincibility to fulfill this purpose, but it's also very slow to start up, 23 frames, making it inadvisable to anti-air with. It finds its use in another facet of her offense, being a very strong mix-up option. Elphelt's 6P is an overhead and grants a combo on hit. Combined with some of her Oki options we'll detail later, this thing can be very scary even with the telegraph startup. For the sake of anti-airing, Elphie relies on her very fast close slash, which lacks head invincibility but has incredibly fast startup and a tall hitbox. Oh, and her 5K. This is a standing normal that hits low. I keep telling y'all, characters with standing lows? Evil. This one is plus on block, has a ton of active frames, and the hitbox placement is insane. There's literally no hurtbox on her foot. An outstanding meaty and counter poke. Elphelt has a button for basically any situation in this game, fast and rewarding lights for a barre, strong anti-airs, and great pokes. Things really start to come together when we look at her specials. First up, 214K Bridal Express. This is mainly used as a combo ender on the ground, with the slower air version having use as a pseudo dive kick to vary up Elphelt's approach or bait high commitment anti-airs from the opponent if done at a shallow angle. Ground Bridal has some other uses. It's punishable on block if done point blank, but it has a lot of active frames. With the right spacing, it's more than possible to make this plus on block, and that can make it a threatening option in neutral too. The real party starters are Berry, Pine, and her 2 stances. The latter first. Elphelt's 2 stances, commonly referred to as Shotgun Stance and Rifle Stance, both serving different purposes and both strong as hell. In Rifle Stance, Elphie cannot move or block. Instead, you're given control of a reticle she can aim anywhere on screen that isn't behind her. Pressing any attack button, besides D, which is used to exit the stance early, will fire a shot from the rifle. Rifle Stance is mainly used as a harassment tool against characters with poor mobility. It's pretty slow to recover and the actual shot doesn't inflict much hit stun, so Elphelt can't really zone with it, but it still has value in some matchups, and Elfie can also combo off the shot with Red Roman cancel if you've got meter to spend. Then we have Shotgun stance, where the real fun begins. Much like the rifle stance, Elphelt cannot jump with the shotgun out, although she can still block, walk, and dash. She also still has access to Bridal Express and Berry Pine, but her regular buttons are replaced by unique shotgun buttons, each of which grant Elphelt excellent pressure or damage, or both. Shotgun P and Shotgun H are both 3-frame startup, tying them for the fastest buttons in the game. Shotgun P is +1 on block, and with minimal pushback it allows for pressure that can be hard to contest for characters who don't also have a 3-frame button, which is a lot of characters. She can also use it to set up tick throws with Shotgun D, which is a 15-frame startup command grab that leads to high damage in the corner and has invul against throws to beat Abare grab attempts. Shotgun K does a roll that crosses the opponent up and has 10 frames of full invul, making it useful as a mix-up option. She can also do this outside of the shotgun stance with 236K, although this version of the roll does not have full invul. Shotgun S will stagger the opponent on hit and it's 0 on block, again with minimal pushback. It finds its use as an excellent combo tool and frame trap, and it can occasionally be used for anti-airing. Finally, we have the star of the show, Shotgun H. Using this baby gives Elphelt some of her highest damage combo routes. As stated before, it's 3-frame startup normally, and it's got a surprising amount of range and a very disjointed hitbox. Where things start to get really crazy is when you charge this baby up, which can be done by standing still. After about a second, Elphelt will emit a pink glow and her stance will change. While she's locked in, Shotgun H becomes enhanced to a really stupid degree. Charged Shotgun H is 1-frame startup, +5 on block, takes away a ton of meter if blocked with faultless defense, and the chip damage? Yeah, okay. In the corner, it wall splats, and Elphelt can loop this by performing a reload. Reloads can be done with both the shotgun and rifle stances after a shot by quickly inputting 4-6 and then H for the shotgun and S for the rifle. The wall splat from powered up Shotgun H lasts long enough for Elphelt to reload, charge another powered up shot, and then release it. Combo routes that hit multiple powered up shots are called shotgun loops, and they fuck your shit up something proper. Shotgun loops do a ton of damage, and they build Elfie a ton of meter, which she has many uses for. Although Elphelt has to stand still to charge Shotgun H, she can still block standing while charging by holding up back. This works because of the fact that she cannot jump with the shotgun out. Shotgun and rifle stance are both extremely strong, and they have pretty decent synergy with each other, which is helped by Elphelt being able to go into one stance from the other. The terrifying offense she can push with her buttons and shotgun stance is all tied together by her final special move. Berry Pine, which is often referred to as Pineberry by players, is crazy. Upon doing the motion, Elphelt pulls out a grenade that will detonate once a small amount of time passes. That handy timer located above her tension meter will cue you in on how much time is left before it explodes. Elphelt can choose to keep the grenade on her until it explodes or toss it. After throwing it, Elphelt can also detonate the Pineberry manually by hitting it with any of her moves that fire her guns. So, Pineberry. This thing is an absolutely horrifying Oki tool. Once Elphelt gets a knockdown, the ideal follow-up is to take out a Pineberry, throw it low so it's close to the opponent during their wake-up, and then put them in the shredder. Just the mere presence of this thing is enough to scare people into not pressing on her shotgun frame traps, and it also lends nicely to enhancing her high-low with stuff like 5k and 6p, greatly increasing the rewards off of those particular options. The explosion consistently leads to a combo conversion, which Elphelt can score another knockdown off of, and then take out another Pineberry and start the cycle all over again. What makes Pineberry Oki so good is that the grenade actually has a hitbox when it travels after being thrown. If a toss is timed properly, Elphelt can force the opponent to block it as soon as they wake up, giving her a strong meaty option that often keeps her safe or gives her the ability to work around Abare and reversals. Pineberry's hitbox also makes it a good neutral tool. Most of the time, Elphelt is incentivized to throw it as soon as possible, but there's merit to letting it cook too. A late toss, while sacrificing the meaty potential, offers superior frame advantage on the grenade when it's blocked, which makes it great as a blockstring ender. These little strawberries just put the fear of God into the opponent, which means chances are high that they might do something hasty that Elphelt can punish. Caution is advised though. If Elphelt still has a Pineberry in her hands when the time goes off, it'll still explode, which can actually damage her. Among Elphelt's strongest Okizeme options is the Jump D YRC, which is done after safe jumps that are set up using Air Pineberry. Ordinarily, Jump D is an overhead that completely whiffs on crouching opponents. However, if you perform a yellow Roman cancel after the Jump D in these setups, it becomes a mid. Most players will stand block if they recognize a safe jump to avoid getting hit by an overhead. If they stand block the YRC Jump D, they'll be put into a state where they're stuck in their standing block animation, which has a taller hurt box, allowing for attacks that would whiff on crouchers to connect. This type of setup is called a fuzzy overhead. If a character is put into block stun that's tight enough, even if they change their block direction to down back, the character will remain in their standing block stance for some time. In Elphelt's case, the YRC Jump D forces them into that situation. Even if they're holding down back to crouch block, they still have the standing block animation, and thus also have the taller standing hurt box. This enables seriously nasty, true high-low mix-ups that are very hard to distinguish between. Elphelt can do multiple overheads, she can do overhead and then low, she can do a dash up low, she can do tricky stuff like tossing the Pineberry and then following up after the opponent blocks it. You're spoiled for choice on mix here. If she gets a hit, she gets mad damage and starts her snowball, and even if the opponent simply crouch blocks to avoid the situation with Jump D as a whole, the YRC expands its hitbox low enough to force them to block it, and since it's a safe jump, it keeps her safe from reversals. Pineberry can also be used for unblockables. Elfie's unblockables make use of Pineberry in conjunction with the rifle stance. Similarly to the shotgun, keeping the reticle still in rifle stance for 32 frames will power up the shot, with the reticle's size increasing as an indicator. The level 2 rifle shot deals more damage and causes a knockdown on hit, but more importantly, it's unblockable. Elphelt's unblockable setups vary from character to character, but consistently involve taking a Pineberry out during a combo, and then getting a knockdown and throwing it once it's close to exploding. By performing a yellow Roman cancel, Pineberry's initial hit will have extended block stun from the slowdown, giving her time to fully charge up an unblockable shot. Important to note is that you must avoid shooting the grenade itself with the shot, as that will cause it to explode early. The idea here is to time it so that the Pineberry's explosion occurs directly after the shot, allowing Elphelt to get a full combo. And these setups can be looped, allowing for another unblockable off the knockdown until she runs out of meter. Escaping her unblockables depends mainly on the timing of the setup and the character, but the primary anti-unblockable measure in Exerd is Blitz Shield. Blitz Shield is a core defensive mechanic in Exerd that, for the low cost of 25 meter, can deflect strikes and projectiles, as well as attacks coded to be unblockable. A successful blitz will provide invul to the user and will knock the character who was shielded back depending on the attack that was shielded, allowing for a punish. In the case of Elphelt, blitzing the grenade will give you invul, allowing for a super jump or backdash to be done to avoid an immediate shot. Other setups with more delay between the grenade and shot can potentially be escaped meterlessly. However, Elphelt has ways around these escape methods anyway. It should also be noted that while these unblockables are very strong, performing a YRC will cause a penalty that lowers the amount of meter you build after doing it, which acts as another limiting factor on the practicality of Elphelt's unblockables. I mentioned how these setups can vary from character to character, and this applies to many of her combos as well. Depending on character weight, you'll have to adjust your routes across different matchups, which is a pain, no denying that, but it only stands as an annoyance, not a genuine detriment to the character. As is probably evident, Elphelt is a monster on offense, especially in the corner. There's hardly a scarier position to be in than stuck in the corner with a grenade by your feet, and a shotgun being shoved into your face for constant plus frames, and she has no problems getting you there thanks to the corner carry on her combos. She has stupidly high reward on hit when she opens you up, and the meter she builds is handily reinvested into RCs for combo conversions that lead to more of her devastating Oki. Defensively, she has a good 4-frame 2P for a Bari and a decent reversal super, and her backdash is incredible too. She also gets a lot of use out of universal stuff like dead angles and Blitz Shield. Her other non-defensive super, Genoverse, is a projectile with lots of combo utility, on top of being plus on block. Another nice way for her to cash out. When things go her way, something that tends to happen fairly often, it's not hard to see why some people consider her second only to Johnny. Much of this applies to current Rev 2 Elphelt, but the funny thing is, Rev 2 Elphelt is the result of numerous patches across different versions. Let's take a slight detour into the past. There are 3 major versions of Exerd: Sign, Revelator, Rev 2. Elphelt was a DLC character initially added in Sign. Her game plan is identical across all of Exerd's revisions, but holy shit was she overtuned at the offset in so many ways. A lot of her dominant pokes like far slash, 6H, 5H, these had significantly smaller hurt boxes in Sign. Keep in mind, these buttons are still cracked in Rev 2 after being nerfed with large hurt box extensions, so you can imagine how much harder she was to counter poke prior to those nerfs. Pineberries in current Rev 2 can be knocked away by attacks from the opponent. In Sign, this wasn't the case. On top of that, Pineberries also did not disappear if Elphelt got hit in early versions of Sign. Cannot understate how dumb this was, as it made her already ridiculous Pineberry pressure even harder to contest than it is, since her own combos and pressure could be interrupted by the explosion. This paired perfectly with the Shotgun stance being better. Shotgun S was +3 on block in Sign, compared to being 0 in Revelatory and beyond, and the roll done with Shotgun K had more invul. Also, Rifle Stance's level 2 shot charged faster in Sign, so she didn't even need YRCs for unblockable sometimes. They didn't change that until Rev 2, by the way. The Revelatory and Rev 2 updates, besides giving her a spiffy new outfit, also gave her a ton of nerfs. Her damage, frame data, and meter build all got toned down, and her specials were made much more reasonable. It should say a lot that even after so many nerfs, Elphelt is still considered one of the best. Also, she's adorable. In Exard's follow-up, Guilty Gear Strive, Elphelt is basically an entirely new character. Some moves have vaguely identical equivalents in her Strive kit like Bridal Express and Pineberry, but the stances are gone entirely. So, Elphelt is a Rekka character now. Good on Arxis for recognizing how dumb a stance-based gun character could be and not doing that again. This is gonna be a fun one. Besides Rubber Soul and maybe JP, Yuzuriha from Under Night In-Birth is easily the character I've least enjoyed playing against in any fighting game. Can't tell you how many headaches this fucking matchup's caused me. Let's focus on Uni 1 in particular for this segment. Yuzu takes that big-ass sword in her hand and puts it to good use, becoming a goddess of space control and stifling approaches. Yuzu's choice of zoning tool are her long-range slashes that let her check anyone from unreasonable distances. 236X is a slash that, while fairly slow at 17 frame startup for the A and B versions, compensates with enormous range. The B version has a horizontal angle while the A version has an upward angle, and both of them hit from absolutely ludicrous distances. It's absurd. The C version hits from both A and B's angles and has faster startup, so it's a particularly effective tool for whiff punishing. Jump 236A goes diagonally downward, which is a good way to check people dashing toward her. Combined with some of her longer ranged buttons, like her 5C and 2C, Yuzu becomes a figurative wall that can be extremely difficult to surmount. Yuzu is also equipped with a handy teleport special, 421X. Her teles send her to different points on the screen and have limited amounts of invincibility against strikes. They're pivotal tools for repositioning during her zoning to keep it as unpredictable as possible. The C versions of specials in Uni typically have enhanced properties but also cost 100 meter, but this does not apply to Yuzu's teleport. The C version is meterless just like the A and B, and the only real difference between Yuzu's teleports is the point on screen that they send her and the amounts of invul. Her final special, 214X, has her leap into the air while slashing. This is mainly used as a combo extender or ender depending on the version and situation. That's all her specials, which is great and all, but talking about any of this is completely pointless without going into Yuzu's stance, which is the core of her character and what makes her such a fucking menace. Yuzu will enter the stance upon holding a button after performing certain attacks, which includes every single one of her specials as well as her force function, which is a unique attack to every character that's performed with B plus C. Yuzu's FF, like most of her slashes, has huge range on the ground and in the air. Ground FF can also be charged and becomes unblockable once it's fully charged. Not very practical to land because it takes forever and a half to come out, but it is one hell of a jump scare for people who aren't aware of her having an unblockable. I say that from experience. Anyway, you'll notice those 4 icons below Yuzu's health bar, each corresponding to the game's 4 buttons, A, B, C, and D. They're blacked out normally, but once she enters the stance, they light up. Each of them represents an action that she can perform while in the stance, and boy can she perform actions. It should be noted first and foremost that D in the stance doesn't perform any attacks. If any other button is held to maintain the stance, the only thing D can be used for is manually exiting the stance. Keeping this in mind, Yuzu players will use D as their button to keep her stanced up while taking advantage of the things she can do with A, B, and C. Pressing any of these 3 by themselves will perform attacks that are identical to 6A, 6B, and 6C, which are command normals she has access to when not in stance. She can also perform all 3 of her special moves in this stance. So if all of her stance actions are just buttons and specials she can already do normally, then what's the point of the stance, you might ask? Well, all of the attacks Yuzu can perform in her stance, including her specials, have drastically reduced startup if performed out of them. In addition, she can take advantage of her ability to exit out of the stance with the D button to perform a D cancel. Pressing D before a stance attack recovers will reduce the recovery time of that attack, at the cost of taking Yuzu out of the stance. This has the effect of increasing the frame advantage of her stance attacks, often making them safe and sometimes plus on block. Where things get wild is that Yuzu can actually cancel her stance attacks into other stance attacks, effectively letting her cancel any special move into another. This right here is exactly what makes Yuzu such a dominant force in neutral. With the ability to stance cancel her strong pokes like 236X and jump 6C into each other, Yuzu's already amazing screen control becomes even more oppressive as she gains the ability to check multiple ranges in a short time, which can account for multiple approach options like dash blocking and assaulting. She can also delay those slashes to catch people pressing buttons or attempting to dash. It's also worth mentioning that her zoning tools are strikes, so anything with projectile invincibility or nullification properties won't do anything to them. When she does scratch ya, the ability to cancel into 214X gives her consistent combo conversions from almost any poke at any point on screen, so those 236X slashes that hit from 3 backdashes away lead to damage for her, and it ain't small damage. For basically her entire existence in Uni 1, Yuzu's boasted extremely high damage output, able to consistently deal 3k without even spending meter with her best starters, and even more if she does have resources to spend, which makes her ability to consistently convert her zoning and whiff punishes into combos from almost any distance even more worthy of fear. While in the stance, Yuzu can still move, but with much less flexibility. Her walk in the stance is incredibly slow, but her dash in the stance resembles her teleport specials, and her stance jump goes much higher than her normal jump. The stance dash, combined with her teleport and its ability to be cancelled from other stance moves, gives her very tricky movement, and it makes it hard to track her. The jump is helpful in her combos and pressure, and the teleport can be used for frame trapping. The combo of strong zoning and slippery movement also gives Yuzu the ability to timer scam incredibly well. Combined with her damage output letting her easily take life leads, she's great at winning rounds with timeouts. All of that compounds into extreme difficulty dealing with stance zoning, unless you've got a good read and the patience of a Buddhist. Stance can be used as a way to bridge into Yuzu's non-stance offense. Admittedly, this is an area where Yuzu doesn't really excel. She has no grounded overhead and her stagger pressure is just serviceable. Unlike other zoners like Post-ST Phonon and Hilda, her fastest buttons are 5-frame startup, the fastest buttons available to Uni characters. Her 5A is also a standing low. As tricky as that can be, Yuzu 5A also has very short range and her 2A is a mid, so it can't be used in high-low. Her B and C normals generally have slow startup, and her dash being sluggish to start up means that she has a hard time getting safely back in after being pushed out by her block strings. However, her strike throw is still something to be feared because of this. She gets a combo off her throw, works from anywhere on screen, doesn't cost a lick of her resources, grid-wise or meter-wise. Throw starter obviously scales the combo to high heavens, but there's still precious screen positioning and meter build on offer. Even with her stagger pressure not being amazing, a character with such effective zoning having strike throw as rewarding as hers is insane, so conditioning people to fear that grab is important for opening people up with her. Her other big woes are undeniably her options on defense. 5-frame buttons are a blessing when you're blocking, but neither her 5A or 2A are that great as Abare options, since their incredibly short range makes it hard for her to take her turn back. She has no meterless reversal, and her main 100 meter reversal, 214C, is slow and whiffs at close range, so it's not the most reliable option. Most Yuzu players will instead use Veil Off, which is universal and also costs 100 meter as their main reversal on defense. It's still punishable on block, but a successful VO wake up will knock the opponent away, which is good for her. Uni's universal mechanics are strong enough that solid blocking and throw OSing on the player's part is enough for Yuzu to get by. In the stance, she can't block, she can't tech throws, and she can't shield, though these problems are somewhat offset by her movement allowing her to avoid such situations. The main factor shaping Yuzu's stance-based offense is the fact that she has a limited amount of actions in the stance. Anything you do that involves a button press will consume a stance mark. The button you pressed will go from blue, indicating an action is available, to gray, indicating that no more actions can be taken with that button. This only applies once you're in the stance proper. The attack you perform to enter it doesn't count towards using a mark. And before anyone asks, the mark that glows pink represents the button being held to maintain the stance. Most of the time, Yuzu will have to exit and re-enter the stance to get her marks back, but there are some ways to refresh the marks without leaving stance. Yuzu can do this with her snail walk, which will restore all stance marks upon completion of the animation. Pressing 2-2 in the stance will perform a parry that works against projectiles and strikes. This is quite useful for avoiding stray hits. A successful parry will grant a combo and also restore her marks. Neither of these are super practical though. The combination of having to keep track of stance marks along with needing to hold a button to properly use it results in the character being quite demanding to pilot properly. Played optimally, or even just competently, Yuzu is considered one of the hardest characters in Uni, but she rewards the efforts of those who can do it handsomely with her amazing screen control, great strike throw, fantastic conversion ability, and high damage. Most of what I've talked about so far can be applied to basically every version of Yuzuriha, but there's a couple of specific details of the character and the game in general that made her stand out in certain revisions, particularly ST when she was generally considered top 2 along with Seth. In ST and prior revisions, Jump 236X had 5 active frames, which made it so her zoning was significantly better as her pokes required less precision to clip people with. 4B was also troublesome for many characters. This is a mid-hitting command normal that from frames 7 to 14 will parry any strike that doesn't hit low. A successful parry makes Yuzu invincible for the duration of the move and does a counter that vacuums the opponent towards Yuzu and pops them upward for a combo on hit. It also worked against projectiles, with the same counter occurring and pulling characters towards Yuzu. Characters who could use projectiles to reset their pressure like Nanase and Akatsuki were taking major risks doing this against Yuzuriha, since 4B would absolutely blow them up for it. Losing this option against Yuzu was a major shame, given the difficulty of actually getting into a situation where you could pressure her in the first place. Yuzu would end up receiving nerfs to address both of these in CLR, the update to ST and the final revision of Uni 1. Jump 236X went from 5 active frames to 2, and 4B was changed to no longer trigger the counter against projectiles. However, it can still get rid of projectiles, and it does become special cancelable if it makes contact with one. CLR also nerfed the size of the hitbox on Yuzu's 5B. This was presumably a nerf to an option select Yuzu could perform with it. An option select is basically performing a single input that does multiple actions. 5BAD with tech throws and anti-air with her 5B. 5B has no invul, but it was a workable anti-air thanks to that button's large-ass hitbox and relative speed. ST Yuzu was also a major benefactor of a generally low power level. Part of the reason the matchup was so hard for other characters was because they had little counterplay to her zoning. Dashes across the roster were slower, so dash blocking her zoning was less effective as a way of getting close, and ways to challenge her in neutral were limited. The nerfs in CLR did hurt her slightly, as did buffs to other characters. Batista was considered top 1 in CLR by most players, but Yuzu wasn't that far behind. Following CLR, a new game was released, Uni 2. While Yuzu is still good in this game, system changes and patches haven't been friendly to her or her game plan. Uni 2 represented a major shift in design. Damage is higher across the board, characters build meter faster, dash and walk speeds were buffed, and most damning, many characters got new moves or got buffs to existing attacks that allowed them to get in much easier against Yuzu. Now it's often her who's forced to play around the opponent's options and not the other way around. Uni 2 also removed 1AD, a common throw option select from Uni 1, and made the window for teching throws smaller. These obviously hurt the entire cast, but the effects are much more apparent on characters with weak defensive options, like Yuzu. Relying on good defense against strike throw just isn't as practical for Yuzu players now. Her damage was lowered via a change in a patch that added extra scaling when she goes into the stance multiple times in one combo, and some of her CLR confirms were also nixed. Combined with buffs to damage and conversions for other characters, the days of her outdamaging the rest of the roster are gone. The grid system was adjusted in Uni 2 in ways that negatively affect her. That meter at the bottom of the screen is the grid meter. To make a long story short, both players are basically playing tug of war with this bar. Most every action you commit to will either give you grid or take it away. Once a certain amount of time passes, a cycle completes and the player with more grid is put into Vorpal state, which grants many benefits, including access to chain shift, which lets you cancel normals and many specials on block or hit. Grid was something Yuzu kind of struggled to control even in Uni 1, because jumping backwards is one of the many things that loses you grid, as is having your attacks blocked, while moving forward will gain you grid. This is why Yuzu players couldn't just zone forever, because she'd basically be giving away free Vorpals to someone dash blocking against her. Since getting grabbed also loses you grid, it did make her throw a lot scarier though, and she could also take advantage of Vorpal stripping to completely remove Vorpal from the opponent. In Uni 2, the rate at which characters gain grid while moving forward is much faster, so zoning is more detrimental for her in this way as well. The Vorpal strip was also removed. Simply put, the more aggressive direction Uni 2 took just does not benefit a character with her playstyle. Uni 2 Yuzu can be considered a victim of power creep, not helped by her being as difficult as she is, and so many of the Uni 2 top tiers just being way easier to play. Uni 1 Yuzu though? Menace. Plain and simple. Perhaps the state of Uni 2 Yuzu is just karma. Melty Blood Actress Again current code is up there with VSAV and Heritage for the Future as one of my absolute favorites. So let's talk about another character from this game that you roll your eyes at if you see someone hovering over her on character select. I've talked about C. Roa before, the orb-setting, go-getting top tier who smothers you with pressure till your guard bar just can't take no more. However, his throne does not stand completely uncontested. Lovely viewers, Hime, Archetype Earth. Basically everyone refers to her with the name Hime. Anyway, she was originally a boss in Melty Blood Actress Again, hidden from regular play and designed to stand above the playable roster in terms of power. For Actress Again current code, she was given a proper set of sprites and made selectable in a post-launch update along with powered CL. Sometimes it's easy to tell when a character is explicitly designed to just be better than everyone else in a fighting game, like Yun in SF4 Arcade Edition, and Hime gives off those vibes big time. Regardless of moon choice, whichever Hime you select will bless your hands with a powerhouse of a character. If you're not familiar with the moons in AACC, then allow me to explain. AACC's roster consists of 31 characters, but after picking a character, you're given a choice of 3 moons: crescent, half, and full. CHF. Each moon dramatically changes things up. Not only does each one offer slightly different ways of using Melty's universal mechanics, but the moon you choose actually offers a modified moveset for your character. Characters gain or lose different specials between each moon, so the 3 variants of the characters can and often do end up with very different game plans, and how strong the character is can vary from moon to moon. Hime is a character who is strong no matter what your choice is, and a big part of why is that the base skeleton of this character is already dumb, and the unique specials and mechanics afforded to whichever moon you choose simply sweetens the deal further for her. For this segment, I'd like to focus particularly on F-Hime. Full Moon Hime is generally agreed to be the strongest of the 3 and one of the absolute best characters in the game. Not only does she benefit from the F-Moon exclusive systems, but some of the F-Moon specific versions of her own moves are a level beyond crazy. Hime is a character designed to have oppressive space control, and this is evident with her buttons, many of which are absolutely huge. Notable among these is her 2C, which is a normal I've had actual nightmares about. F-Hime 2C is gargantuan, disjointed, air unblockable, and plus unblock. It also recovers faster than you'd think a 12-frame button with this much range would. 5B, 2B, and 5C are also massive in terms of range, and since Hime has the fastest walk speed in the game, she's more than proficient when it comes to screen coverage. With great zoning and anti-air, she can effortlessly convert into combos. 236X does a special known as the Geyser, which is no end of annoying to deal with. All 3 Hime moons have access to this special, and it causes a wave to pop out from the ground. The A and B versions of the wave hit low, so you can't block this standing, and it's also air unblockable. H-Hime's A Geyser and F-Hime's A and B Geysers pop the opponent towards her on hit. This allows her to convert it into a combo, which she can easily do with a jump cancel. With access to the geyser as well as her huge buttons and good ground movement, she can give characters who rely on their own ground game serious trouble. Geyser especially makes for really strong RPS. Hime's 2B and 2C are so large that most characters can't contest with their own buttons at the max range she can pressure with, but Hime can also pop Geyser to catch people trying to dash in or IAD over them. In the air, 236X does a different special, commonly called Pillar. Pillar, after its long startup, will come up from the ground at one of two different areas of the screen depending on the version used. On top of letting her stall in the air, it's a solid harassment tool at long distances and also great for Oki. The EX pillar done with C is plus on block and tracks the opponent's position, on top of having faster startup. I got beef with this move. It's amazing for letting Hime shut down zoning, and in general works great for keeping people in check from basically any distance. The pillars can be blocked even in the air, which is a good thing for the opponent, but being able to get someone to block this if you checked their air approach still has benefits for Hime, including the shocking amount of guard and chip damage it does. Shielding it will give the opponent a shitload of meter though, so watch out for that. She also has a decent projectile with her sparks and EX shoulder, which has super good range and some invul. Hime's most pivotal special is her flight mode, something that is once again shared between all three moons. 2-2D and you take to the skies, during which you cannot block. This can be done on the ground or in the air, and she can do it regardless of how many air actions you've consumed, so it is possible to double jump and then pop flight, which sends her high enough on the screen to high-five the frame rate counter in the top left. If no direction is held in flight mode, Hime will just hover there. Holding left or right will have her move in that direction while drifting downward, and if you hold down, she'll drift straight down. Hitting up will just jump, which exits the flight mode. If you hit 2-2, you get a fast fall that shoots her back to the ground quickly. Last thing to note is that while Hime is in flight state, her meter will drain until she lands or gets hit, although Hime is privileged in that even if her meter drains to 0 while in flight, she remains in that state until it ends. Hime flight is really strong, for a number of reasons. Hime's jump is super floaty, so her movement in the air is normally very committal, but using flight lets her move around in a way that's much less restrictive, not to mention unpredictable. Harder than it looks to catch this lady when she's dancing around the air, believe me. Hime has the ability to cancel the majority of her specials and her buttons into flight. This can be done on hits or block, and even whiff. Only air normals can be cancelled on whiff, but on block or hit, do whatever you want. For specials, all of her meterless specials can be flight cancelled, with the exception of her DP, and the first hit of 214B, her shoulder charge. For Hime, this basically lets her cut the recovery of her specials, which has the effect of making some of them much safer. This is especially strong on Geyser, which is minus 17 normally, but becomes much harder to punish when flight cancelled. To really open up what makes flight so busted though, let's talk about Hime Flight Oki. F-Hime has some of the strongest Oki in AACC, straight up, and the craziest part is not just the actual mix-ups themselves, but her ability to set them up so consistently. Thanks to stuff like 2C and increased jump C, Hime has multiple ways to end her combos in an untechable knockdown. In these knockdown situations, the opponent is forced to wake up slowly, giving her time to go into flight and put herself in position for a mix-up, of which she has a ton with her aerial drifting and fast fall. Mid-screen is where her Okizeme is at its scariest, because you have access to 4-way mix. You can either drift to the other side of the opponent and hit them cross-up, or remain on the same side. This is even stronger than it might sound, because it bypasses systems that are specifically in place to limit left-right mix. Melty Blood has cross-up protection, which allows for cross-ups to be blocked by holding either direction, left or right. The only way to hit cross-up mix in this game is to actually turn your character around so that they're facing a different direction from the opponent, and since Hime can do that during flight, her mix ignores cross-up protection entirely. On either side, she can either do a very low to the ground overhead or fastfall and do a low. With proper movement and drifting, this mix becomes unreactable, and there are ways to make it even more ambiguous, such as doing a late jump C while drifting to fake an overhead and then going low. All of this mix converts into a combo, allowing Hime to score another knockdown and get another mix-up afterward, looping the situation until the opponent dies or guesses correctly. Much of this mix can also be made reversal safe with the right timing. The routes she takes to get knockdowns tend to do just average damage, but the Oki does mostly make up for that. F-Hime can also add throws into the mix, which is especially good for beating shield. Shield is a mechanic available to all 3 moons, and while there are some differences in how they work, in general, shielding an attack lets you retaliate by canceling into a shield counter or just a straight up button or special. You can shield while standing or crouching, and for normals you must shield in the corresponding direction. The one exception are 2As, which can be shielded in any direction despite being a crouching button, with some exceptions. F-Hime is not an exception, but while stand shielding on Wake Up against her Oki might seem appealing since it covers her low-hitting 2A and overheads, she can also just grab you or use 2B, which is a low that cannot be shielded standing. There are also anti-shield option selects she can use, so shield is really not a reliable counter in this situation. Now, in the corner is where things change, as Hime cannot cross the opponent up here, but her high-low mix is just as strong. With a meaty pillar, she can do tricky falling overheads, fast fall lows, double overheads, and instant overheads with jump A. The pillar can be shielded, which creates a bit of RPS for her, but it's still mostly in Hime's favor. With how dominant F-Hime's neutral is thanks to stupid shit like 2C and Geyser, getting hit by F-Hime is practically an inevitability, and after that, you're at the mercy of some of the most unforgiving mix you'll ever have dealt with. For Hime players, it's also important to take into account wake-up timing, as well as how they got knocked down. There are 3 types of knockdown animations in this game and 2 types of wake-up animations, and the timings are different amongst the cast, so some adjustment may be needed depending on the matchup. F-Hime also touts extremely strong meter manipulation, both for herself and the opponent. F-Moon characters can charge their meter up a la S-Groove in CVS2. Might seem a bit risky to do, but given how F-Hime can kill you for trying to approach her recklessly, it's not the worst idea to use it as a way of goading people into doing just that. F-Hime can also completely cripple the opponent's ability to use their own meter for a duration using her arc drive. Meter works differently between the 3 moons, but both C and F moon characters will enter a state known as max mode once the bar is full. In max mode, your meter goes down slowly, but you can perform any attacks that require meter until max mode ends, upon which your meter returns to normal. It's sort of like Veil-Offs in Uni. It also grants access to the Arc Drive, which is basically a super. Both C and F moons can also activate Blood Heat while in max mode, which heals red life and powers up your Arc Drive. It's an upgrade of the regular Heat state, which only C moon characters can activate at a standstill if not in max mode when they have at least 100 meter, and has similar but weaker benefits to Blood Heat. On hit, Hime's Arc Drive will cause a circuit break, which completely locks the opponent out of gaining meter and disables almost every action that requires it, including EX moves, for a small duration, 5 seconds if done in max mode and 10 seconds if done in Blood Heat. Certain circuit breaks leave the opponent's meter intact once the break timer is over, but Hime's Arc Drive is different. Once the break period inflicted by it is over, the opponent will lose 100 meter, unless they're in max mode. In this situation, F-Hime's Arc Drive, once the timer is up, will instead reduce the opponent's meter to 0. Now, the opponent needing to be in max mode may make this sound kinda situational, especially since a lot of characters can safely work around it by just doing EX moves to keep themselves from reaching a full bar, but it's much more practical than you'd think thanks to a system in the game that causes extra meter to be granted to characters being hit by a combo once that combo exceeds a certain length. F-Hime's Arc Drive does a ton of hits by itself, and even more so in Blood Heat, so it's pumping a ton of meter into the opponent, easily sending them into max mode for the circuit break. It really can't be understated how strong this is, and while F-Hime isn't the only character capable of doing this, she can exploit it much easier than most. Hime can easily combo into her Arc Drive with the Hime Kick EX move. If she's in max mode and has enough meter, she can do the Hime Kick during a route, land and pop Blood Heat during the combo, and then go into her Arc Drive, and then bam, gone is their meter and gone is their hope. Characters who rely on meter for reversals lose those options completely as they can't use EX moves, and C-Moon characters can't perform heat activation either. Defensive situations aside, F-Hime's ability to completely take EX moves out of play can swing momentum in her favor against other characters with strong EX moves like Nero and Satsuki. This meter denial is primarily used against C and F-Moon characters. H-Moon does not have a max mode. Reaching full meter for H-Moon characters instead activates heat, and on top of that, H-Moon characters cannot enter heat in the middle of combos, so you can't use Arc Drive to push them into heat and then rob them. Hitting them while they're in heat state would do nothing since H-Moon characters automatically burst if they enter hit stun in heat. So F-Hime's meter heisting isn't as useful on H-Moon characters, but you can absolutely fuck up someone's day if they're on a C or F character, and the fact that she can add this into her loop of combos and the knockdowns into 4-way mix is just so silly. Hime does have a serious issue when it comes to survivability. Her defense modifier is poor, so she has some of the lowest health in the game, and her fastest buttons are 7 frames, when a lot of other characters' fastest buttons are 4 or 5 frames. So she struggles with Abare too. Hime is not the only character with disgusting Oki in AACC, and if she happens to guess wrong, she can potentially get 2-touched. While all 3 Hime moons suffer from being squishy, they also all have a DP. The B version of Hime's DP is absolutely amazing. It's fully invincible, very big, and very fast, and it gets her out of a pinch in bad situations. F and C Hime in particular have absolutely huge hitboxes on their heat activation, along with having the second fastest startup in that category. I didn't mention this before, but heat also regenerates red health. For C Moon, the regen is slow, but F Moon heat heals all red health instantly. It's kinda silly. Remember how I said before that only C Moon characters can perform a regular heat activation if not in max mode? It's true that F Moon's heat activation only works in max mode and activates blood heat over the normal heat, but F Moon does have a way to access the regular heat state. It's called Initiative Heat, IH for short, and allows for normals and specials to be cancelled on block or hit. IH can only be done in max mode, but in addition to the benefit of being able to cancel most of your character's moves, it also puts your character into heat state. You might be thinking it's silly to use this over simply popping blood heat, but when you consider it's basically a Roman cancel that also heals all your red health at the drop of a hat, you take the slightly weaker heat state. F-Hime's shield counter is also fucking bonkers. It continues the trend of things in Hime's kit being big because boss, and it's plus on block and leads to a combo on hit. Oh, and how could I forget? Dearest gods, this has caused me untold amounts of strife and annoyance. Hime's hurtbox. Despite being fairly tall and wide, she has like the thinnest hurtbox ever. Landing hits and combos on her can be unreasonably difficult, and on top of that, her collision box is bugged to stay up during her wake up, so she's immune to a lot of left-right mix-ups. Wonderful. As hard as Hime eats shit if she gets hit, getting that hit can be harder than you'd think. You probably get the gist of why F-Hime is so strong. Her neutral is profoundly stupid, and any hit she lands puts you in a death blender. Not hard to see why she's considered a top 3 character by so many players, but let's highlight the other 2 moons for Hime for a bit since they have their own strengths and neat quirks. The major addition to her moveset in C and H Moon are wind mines that she can place down with 214A and jump 214A or B, which linger on screen once set. C Hime's wind mines must be detonated automatically, but H Hime's detonate on their own. H Hime's mines have numerous helpful applications, threatening the opponent during neutral with the explosion itself, helping out during her pressure, and just overall being a large nuisance. She can also set a wind mine in the air, and jump 214A causes her to retreat backwards a long distance. Both C and H Hime retain the massive screen-filling buttons, geyser, and flight movement, but they also don't have F Hime's 2C. H and C Hime's 2C, while actually hitting low, is not plus on block and does not cause a knockdown. They both also don't have increased jump C, so they don't really have ways to get hard knockdowns without spending meter, compared to F Hime, who gets mix off basically any meterless hit. H and C Hime do have reverse beats, which lets her cancel buttons of high strength into weaker buttons, but Hime is not a super pressure-centric character anyway, and the benefits of a plus on block 2C and a geyser that leads to a combo if they try to contest are a bit more evident. They also share the same adaptability and amazing neutral, but F Hime being able to set up her Oki without even needing meter is what puts her a measure above the 2 and most of the cast. C Hime and H Hime still have their own merits, and C Hime, generally agreed to be the weakest, is still comfortably high tier in most players' eyes. Very much a 3 cake situation here. For the last segment of this video, let's do something festive. There's a new Marvel fighting game coming out and a new Mega Man game on the horizon, so I've got my mind on the series that was brave enough to merge these 2 properties. Was that justification hasty enough? Anyway, let's talk about Zero and Marvel 3. a character that really needs no introduction. We've seen this guy on screen lightning looping fellas for the last 15 years. You already know Zero is completely allergic to not being top tier when he's in a fighting game, but what exactly does he have going on in this game? Zero is known for a couple of things: oppressive neutral, a busted projectile, and of course, the install. Zero's ability to assert himself in neutral is enhanced by many aspects of his kit. One is his impressive ability to move around the screen. His grounded forward dash and air dash are on the sluggish side, though his back dash is very fast. He's not entirely reliant on them though. He has access to 214X, which is a command dash that can be performed on the ground and in the air. It seems very committal at first glance, as some of the versions of the teleport don't let him act for a good while he's dashing, but Zero has ways around that, and it allows him to move horizontally and vertically in different directions. He can also move around the screen with Raikosen, jump 623X, which sends him lunging towards the opponent with a lightning strike. This special is known for its use in his infamous lightning loop combos, but together with the teleport, it can be used to move around the screen pretty quickly. Probably Zero's most integral special is the Buster. You can charge the Buster by holding down any of the 3 main attack buttons, L, M, or H. The charge goes up to 3 levels, each one boosting the damage, size, and number of hits that the projectile touts. Zero is free to charge the Buster during most of his actions, jumping, dashing, and even attacking. He can charge while blocking, but he loses the charge if he gets hit. Shit, you can even charge a Buster shot during the round start period before a game begins. If you want to play Zero in Marvel 3, Negative Edge is a technique you'd better get acquainted with, because Zero's Buster is useful for so many different things once it reaches maximum charge. On its own, it's a large projectile with high durability and damage, so it rips through other weaker projectiles. However, it also dramatically improves his ability to confirm out of stray hits thanks to the fact that it causes a soft knockdown on hit, which gives him extremely good confirming ability off of many things, including assists. Zero can charge multiple busters in one combo, so expect to see this in his routes a lot. The final property that makes level 3 Buster so absolutely amazing is that Zero gains the ability to cancel any of his other special moves into the Buster shot. While Raikosen and his command dash have their issues when it comes to mobility, Zero being able to cancel them into a Buster shot makes his movement much more flexible and unpredictable. If Raikosen is cancelled into the Buster early, Zero will halt his movement, but the lightning will still come out. This covers a huge amount of the screen, turning that area into a danger zone where getting clipped can lead to a full combo for Zero, and giving him an easy method to bully his way towards the opponent. He can also cancel his other projectile, 236X, into Buster Shot for some decent zoning, which becomes especially ridiculous when he's in his install. The air version fires downwards, so he has ways to cover multiple angles of approach when using Buster Shot as a neutral tool. Simply put, it's just a really damn good move. The obvious issue is that Zero needs to give up one of the 3 main attack buttons to charge a Buster Shot, but there are ways to work around this limitation. The shot is not tied to whatever button you use to begin charging it. This means that, for example, it's possible to start charging with L and then switch your finger to M. First attack. As long as you keep M held down, Zero will maintain the charge, allowing you to make a button available without sacrificing the Buster Shot. There's also the Buster release glitch, which allows him to use the button he's holding the charge for temporarily. If you perform a special move on hit or block while charging a Buster Shot with the button being used to hold the charge, Zero will maintain the charge during the special move, though you do need to quickly hold down another button to not lose it once the hit stop concludes. First attack! It can be awkward to do for sure, but creative fingers can let Zero take full advantage of the Buster even with the odd input. Zero's neutral in general is great, as he has some really strong, ignorant buttons like his Jump H and Jump 2H, the pizza cutters, which are well known for being belligerent buttons that are extremely active and difficult to challenge, and hit on both sides. Buster Shot cancels make contesting him during his movement scary, as a single Buster hitting you can put you in a bad situation. A lose your character situation. Speaking of, guess we should get right into it. Sogenmu. Zero pops this for a single bar of meter and shit hits the fan. Upon activation, Zero creates a clone of himself. For 5 seconds, this clone will repeat any actions performed by Zero with a slight delay. Not only will it mimic strike attacks, but using 236X or the Buster Shot will fire 2 projectiles. Combined with X Factor, there's some seriously egregious chip damage potential here. More pressing though, the loops. Lightning loops are the Zero combo route. The basic idea is that you get the opponent to a certain height during a combo and then pop the install, after which you loop hitting them with Raikosens while also firing and recharging Buster Shots to maintain the opponent's height during the juggle. Since the install's duration is so short, lightning loops are typically done as a way of finishing a combo, not unlike a standard ender, and it leads to unbelievable damage, helped by Zero's high minimum damage scaling. Zero can very easily extend combos past the install duration by popping it again and going into another set of loops. Thanks to this combo, Zero boasts some of the highest damage output in the entire game. Without even needing to pop X Factor, he can dumpster anyone on the roster, in situations where most other characters would need to spend extra meter into DHCs just to kill. And the craziest part is, he really doesn't even need to invest much in terms of resources either. So Genmu is a 1-bar super, and lightning loops can be done entirely solo. Even though Zero is prohibited from building meter while the install is active, it's very easy for post-loop extensions to build back the bar he spent, which is handy when he needs meter for another super to finish a character off. Hell, you start every match in Marvel 3 with 1 bar, so he's literally got everything he needs for his strongest tools from the get-go. Since he hardly needs more than just 1 bar to net crazy damage and benefits from having assists behind him for his neutral and pressure, the majority of Zero players run him as the first character on the team, and goddamn does he shine with all that help. When it comes to actually opening people up, both in his pressure and just during incoming, he has lots of options. Raikosen and the command dash give him options for both left-right and high-low mix. The light version of the command dash in the air causes him to zoom down to the ground, which effectively lets him use it as a fastfall, and makes for a tricky option when paired with his fast, low-hitting 2L. The H command dash causes him to dash upwards before falling, which can similarly be tricky to deal with. He can also cross the opponent up with the L and M versions of the grounded command dash even in the corner, and it lets him minimize the effects of push blocking his pressure by closing the distance after he's been pushed away. His many multi-hit normals like 5H and 6H also helps in his block strings. Raikosen is also capable of crossing the opponent up and allows him to remain plus even if the initial mix was blocked, leading to even more guessing after the fact for the opponent. So Genmu is known for the damage it enables, but it can also be used to crack the opponent's defense. Since any low or overhead attacks repeated by the clones maintain those properties, Zero can create extremely tight high-low mix and even high-low unblockables with the correct timing. His combo conversions with the Buster and the damage he boasts in the corner thanks to lightning loops means that basically any touch he lands is a dead character, and even if you do guess right, Zero can still turn that into more pressure and more mix-ups to follow. Zero OCVs often look like the most one-sided thing in the world, and his incoming mix being as hard to defend against as it is a big part of why. As a top-of-the-line point character, good assists are a must for him. The 2 characters you've probably seen run alongside him the most are Virgil and Dante, a team so powerful and common enough that it's earned itself a whole lot of fans, and a nickname, Zero May Cry. ZMC is all about killing things real quickly. Since Zero doesn't need much help in the damage department, the goal of his partners is to back up his pressure and his neutral. Dante's role is indicative of this as he contributes one of the best assists in the game, Jam Session. Jam Session's large vertical reach allows Zero to cover the only part of the screen where he can't fire his Buster, which is above him, and it has long block stun, so it greatly enhances his mix. As for Virgil, not only does he provide another good assist with Rapid Slash, which has disgusting corner carry, but since Virgil is a character who hugely benefits from X Factor and meter, Zero's self-sufficient nature allows for those particular resources to be saved for Virgil, assuming he ever needs to come out. That reason is also why you sometimes see people pair Zero with Phoenix, another common anchor character that lives for X Factor level 3 and meter. Other Zero players have paired him up with Hawkeye, and he gets a ton of mileage when ran with Doom. Obviously that applies to basically every character, but Doom missiles and Plasma Beam are as good with Zero as they are for anyone else. Buster Shot lets him very easily convert hits from many different angles into full combos, so he can make do with quite a few different partners and is friendly to many shells. The only real dent in his armor is, the Zero. That means he falls apart faster than a Jenga stack. Zero has 830,000 health, putting him in one of the lower HP brackets in the game, so death does come easy to him, although in a game like Marvel 3, a lot of the time that hardly matters as combos are optimized enough that a lot of characters have routes that will more than likely end up killing anyone above Zero's health. He's slippery enough to be able to avoid many defensive situations, and incoming is not a position he often finds himself in since so many people run him on point, but it's always something to be wary of as it means he can be punished harder for getting clipped by something or from chip damage. Zero is universally regarded as a top tier, contender for best in the game, though he's got stiff competition with Morrigan, but of the characters who tend to be considered at that level in Marvel 3, Doom, Morrigan, Virgil, Magneto, he pretty definitively has the weakest support value. His assists are mediocre, especially so when compared to the likes of Doom, Mags, and Morrigan, but he can convert into lightning loops if DHC'd into with Sogenmu. Installs remain active on characters when they're in the assist slot, so you can DHC out with it to enhance his assists.
First attack, maximum. Cool.
Even though it's a mediocre assist on his own, his A assist, which is his DP, does offer him an excellent option out of a crossover counter. Crossover counters are used to quickly swap out the current character with your assist while blocking, and by doing this with Zero's A assist, you can take advantage of the invincibility to get him safely swapped in. However, you can also cancel the first hit of the crossover counter into Sogenmu, leaving him plus on block for pressure and letting him convert it into a combo on hit. He also pairs well with X Factor, and his game plan is more than doable solo, so there is value to running him outside of the point position, but he really does shine the brightest in that spot. With his fearsome mix-ups, godlike damage, and incredible efficiency, all of which is taken to another extreme with the right team, he's a staple in the Marvel 3 meta, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. So, there we go. 4 characters who happen to be pretty good in their respective games. I always have fun doing these videos, both because it's cool to be able to learn how a character can bend a set of systems and mechanics to their will, and because it gives me the chance to learn more about characters that I'm already a little bit familiar with. I have a decent amount of experience with fighting Yuzu and F-Hime, so taking a deeper look at what actually makes them so good was really fun, and learning more about UMVC30, a character I've been watching at a casual level for so long, was also a blast. Like I said, there will be an accompanying low tiers video, so don't worry, we'll take a ride on the Struggle Express eventually, but I wanted to do the top tiers video first this time just because it gave me a chance to learn Exerd earlier, honestly. I'd like to give a massive shout out to the people who helped out on the script and made this video possible. Hugest of thanks go to Hardly on the Elphelt section, Rurik for Yuzu, TEADBUB and Halo Hector for F-Hime and Evasion, and Dylan on Zero. Thank you all so much for the help. Some of the footage used in this video was also from Hardly and TEADBUB, and a ton of other different sources as well, so I'll leave all the links and credits and socials and stuff in the description, so please check them out. Anyway, thank you for watching, have a great night, and take care. Hey everyone, welcome to 2026, and the first membership segment of that year. Been a while, I know, but this video was a long time coming, believe me. I began working on it at the beginning of January, and obviously, you know, I had to take a little break because I did go to Frosty Fostings this year. That was at the end of January, beginning of February, but it's done, and I hope you enjoyed it. Again, very, very large endeavor, and it took a lot of help from a lot of other people to make it possible, so again, I'll leave all the credits and stuff in the description. I've already said my part, but again, thank you to everyone that made this video possible. Anyway, that includes the channel members, who I love you all, so it's time to thank you all. Thank you to Old Man Han, Cammy the Killer, Jazba, Mortis, Arg Seals, Wormy, Perfect Orange, Happy the Hap Hap, Gundog92, Loose Chujin, Raymond ZX200, Nick Toyo, Basewire, Power Level Asian, Kira the Stowaway, Sonic Frontiers is a Good Game, Isaac the Collector, and Chan Darin. Thank you all so much for the support throughout all of 2025. It's been incredible to see, and hoping that I can pay it back by releasing even more videos in 2026 that are good. Anyway, not much else to say. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Have a great night. You're all amazing. Thank you.